Yeah. Good morning, everyone. So, yesterday we learnt about some important points related to the open TypeScript. So, in TypeScript object oriented programming, few points we discussed. So, we are learning about the contracts. Yeah. So, in TypeScript object oriented programming, we started discussing about contracts. So, generally, what is the purpose of contract? Contract is to define rules for designing any component. And how you design a contract? So, we design a contract by using interface. Interface is used for designing contracts. So, we discussed that the contract contains rules for both properties and methods. We have rules for properties and rules for methods. And while working with contracts, so one more important is a contract. A contract can have optional rules. A contract can have optional rules. A contract can have optional rules. We can have optional rules. So, for example, we designed a contract, means we designed an interface. Yesterday, we created one interface. This interface is having ID, name, price, quantity, total, print. We have rules for defining properties and we have rules for defining methods. Now, every rule is mandatory. Suppose this rule is actually now implemented by, these rules are implemented by this product. And in the rules, we are adding a rule called rating. And rating is a number type. Then automatically the component becomes error. Why? Because now rating is mandatory missing. We want rating as optional. You know, we can just put a question mark, a null reference character. So then it becomes optional. So optional rules are simply defined by using null reference character question mark. But the question in interview is, you are saying interface is rules. Why we have a rule which can be ignored? Rule means everything you have to follow. Why we have a rule and you can ignore it? The intention of rule is to implement everything. That means you are setting rules, means you are defining that these must be there. And why you are saying that in a rule, one is optional? What is the necessity of a optional rule? In which situation we use optional rules? Question understood? Huh? Rules, you set some rules, means its intention is to follow them. And you are saying that I am giving one rule, but you can ignore. Why you need an optional rule and why an optional rule is allowed in an interface? Why you need the optional rules? So why you need optional rules actually? Optional optional rules are required to define. Optional rules are required to define goals of a component, are used to define goals for a component actually. Goals for a component. Optional rules are defined, optional rules are required to define goals for a component. That means actually what is the concept is, suppose if you know in general when you are working any project, so when you are building any app, we are building some application. So, yep. So here when you are defining some optional rules, that means what is the necessity of optional rule is, suppose you are designing a project, you are working with a project. When we are developing a project, in a project there will be several modules. Usually every project have an objective and every project have a goal. Every project comes with an objective and a goal. What is objective and what is goal? Every software application comprises of objective and goal. In official project document, if you have ever seen project documentations, project related documents, in that you will have an objective and a goal. What is objective and what is goal? What is difference between objective and goal? Any idea? What is difference between an objective and goal? So difference is objective is time bound and it must be achieved. Goal don't have a time bound. It may or may not be achieved. That means your goal is to become something. Will you become? May or may not. Goal may be achieved, may not be achieved. But it is target that we have, we can try that. Objective must be achieved. Every project have its goals and objectives. They mention that. For example, suppose we are having a IRCTC. This is Indian Railways. So we are developing an app for this IRCTC. So IRCTC have options like train availability, ability, train availability, reservation, and live tracking. Like this, we have three things. Now tell me, out of these three, which can be ignored? Which can be okay? If it is not working, it's fine. Live tracking. If train availability not working, if train availability not working, if train availability not working, then primary concept is not there. If train availability is not working, then primary concept is not there. If train availability is not working means what is use of that app? The main purpose of the app is train availability. So it is an objective. It must work. Reservation not working, then what is use? It must work. Live tracking not working, it's okay. We have an alternative process, right? But if it is working, very good. If not working, that's fine, no problem. These are goals. So when we develop an app, we set certain objectives and goals. Every project have that. Objective must be achieved and goal may or may not. And to define goals which may be ignored or not, we need optional rules. That means live tracking is an optional rule. Why? Because live tracking should be there. But in some cases, it can be ignored. It can be ignored. That means the concept of optional rules. Why you need optional rule? Why you need optional rule? To define goal. So here the key concept is, what is difference? Difference. What is difference between objective and goal? So technically objective is time bound and must be achieved. Must be achieved. It is time bound and it must be achieved. So what about the goal? That means goal. So goal is not having any time bound and may or may not be achieved. So, and you can say that may or may not be achieved always, right? So, how you define optional rules? Optional rules are defined by using null reference character. They are defined by using null reference character. That means we configure an interface, iProduct, and in that we have name, string, price, number, and we have rating, question mark, it is an number. So we have print, is a method. It is also optional. We can configure as void. That means a property can be optional and a method can be optional. We can define optional rules for both properties as well as methods. So interface is about rules, and in those rules, some rules can be ignored. And why you set rules and why you allow them to ignore? Because to design certain goals, we need rules to be ignored. That is one point. Another important is contract. Contract can have read-only rules. Contract can have read-only rules. You can have read-only rules in a contract. What is a read-only rule? Read-only rule means so you cannot assign values into rules that are configured as read-only. You can initialize values. You can initialize values, but cannot assign. That is read-only rules. So we can initialize the values, but we cannot assign the values. Then that is read-only. That means actually every rule can be assigned. Every rule can be assigned with a new value. You can assign a new value. For example, you see here, in this example, suppose we are giving price and already price is number and here price is initialized. Price is initialized to 45. Quantity is initialized to 2. Quantity can be changed, but price cannot be changed. That means here, currently, before printing product dot price, and I am assigning new price into this, it is allowing. And product dot quantity, I am assigning new quantity, it is allowing. But I don't want price to assign new value. Once it is initialized, it is fixed. I don't want new one to define. That means once it is initialized, it is fixed. I don't want new one to specify. Then we can make this price as read only. If you make it as read only, interface can have read only rules. Once it is read only, you can see you can initialize, but you cannot assign now. Now there is a problem in assignment. And what is the problem is cannot assign to price because it is read only. A read-only property will allow to initialize, but will not allow to assign. We don't want any modifications in it. We want it at a fixed value. Then we can make it as read only. Read only. So syntactically, interface I product. In this, we have some name string type. And read only price some number type. And quantity is number type. That's how we configure. Interface So it allows to initialize. That means product, it is using an I product. You can initialize. So you can initialize with a value. So comma right here, it's an object. So you can initialize with a value, but you cannot assign. That means if I later access product dot price is equal to some new value I am defining into it. Now this is invalid. So product dot quantity is 3. This is valid. Why price is invalid? Because it is marked as read only. We can have read only rules. So, while working with interface, so which we technically call as a contract. So a contract have rules for both properties and methods. A contract can have read-only rules, and a contract can have another optional rules. Optional rules we just saw, right? Next important another is a contract. A contract can be extended by using another contract. Another contract. A contract can be extended by using another contract. That means without disturbing, why you need to extend? So we already learned inheritance, right? Why we need to extend without disturbing the existing contract? We need to add new features to contract. You can add new features to contract without disturbing the contract. So then how we can do that? By using extension. That means, for example, here we are having another point. Yeah. So here we are having another interface, another contract called I category. And this is having category name, which is a string type. And product have to extend I category. It extends I category. That means without adding category name into product, we can have a category name. That means we are not adding category name into contract, but it is using category name. How it is doing that? By extending. So without disturbing the contract, we can add new rules to the contract. That is possible. Now, according to that, I product is implemented by this. That means category name is missing now. Why? Because I product is inheriting a contract and the rules of that contract are mandatory here. So we need to mention the category name as some electronics, something like this. Now it is fine. And remember, a contract allows multiple inheritance, multi-level inheritance, single inheritance. That means you can extend one contract, you can extend multiple contracts. Multiple contracts like, so we have an interface as I vendor. I vendor is an interface. I vendor contains vendor ID, which is a number, and it contains vendor name, which is a string. Now product have vendor information also. That means who will supply that product, right? That means it can extend comma I vendor also. Multiple inheritance is not supported for classes. but multiple inheritance is supported for, it is supported for interfaces. Why? Why multiple inheritance is not supported for classes and why multiple inheritance is supported for interface? Technically, the reason for this is because of constructor, because of constructor deadlock. Why? See, generally many people will give an answer like why multiple inheritance is not supported for classes. Usually they say ambiguous issues will come. What is ambiguous issue? Two classes may have same name members. That ambiguous issue will come. If they don't have same members, will it work? If they don't have same members, will it work? Still it will not work. Then why you are telling that as a reason? That means may have same name members, ambiguous issue will come. If there are no same name members, will it work? Still it will not work. So that means that is not the reason. That means at high level, if you tell ambiguous issues will come, that is the reason multiple inheritance is not supported because that's what generally learners learn. Then interviews 100% not satisfied. They will say that, okay, you learned like that. That means according to you, why multiple inheritance is not supported means ambiguous issue. Then he will ask you this question like, if there are no same name members in the classes, is it possible? Then you will say, no, it is not possible. That means it is not about the members. It is about whom? It is about the constructor. So why multiple inheritance is not supported for classes? Because of constructor deadlock. What is constructor deadlock is nothing but, for example, let's say we have a base class 1, we have a base class 2, and we have a base class 3, and we have a derived class. Derived class. Now, you remembered the rule of inheritance, na? What is the rule of inheritance? In classes concept, I explained. What is the rule of inheritance? A derived class constructor must call superclass constructor. A derived class constructor must call the superclass constructor. And I told you that in JavaScript, you have to manually call. In other languages, it is implicitly called. So here we are having base 1, a constructor is there. Base 2, a constructor is there. Base 3, a constructor is there. That means all the classes have constructor. Now what derived is doing is derived is extending. It extends base 1, base 2, and base 3. Now what happens is in the derived constructor, we have to call the base constructor. That means we are using super. Now, which constructor will be called? Base 1, base 2, or base 3? There is no order dependency. Then do you know what happens? Memory is allocated, and this memory is waiting for a constructor to load. Which constructor to load? Base class constructor to load. Then do you know what happens? The base constructor 1 is waiting for base constructor 2 to load. And 2 is loading for 3 to load. 3 is waiting for 2 to load. 2 is loading 1 to load. That means all the constructors are waiting for each other. No constructor goes into the memory. If no constructor goes into the memory, inheritance is not completed. That means all are waiting for each other. No one is going into a memory. This mechanism is called deadlock. Deadlock. It is a multi-threading technique. Deadlock is a situation where two are waiting for each other. No one is starting. So why multiple inheritance is not working for classes? It is not working for classes because classes have to load the super constructor first, then the derived constructor. And if there are many super constructors, there will be a deadlock. If there are many super constructors, there will be a deadlock. Why it is supported for interface? Because interface don't have constructor. If interface is not having a constructor, there is no concept of deadlock. There is no concept of deadlock. And remember, here the question again is, if there are two interfaces with the same name members, which one will work? If there are two interfaces with the same name members, then which one will work? That means you are saying that two people given me two sets of rules. And in those two rules, one rule is same. Which one I should follow? If a rule is same, which one follow? Anything you can follow. And which one I follow, which one is latest visible to me, I will follow that. If rules are same, which one to follow? That's not a question. Because whatever latest I am having, that will follow that. Right? There is no question that first one will be, second one will be. Which one to follow? There is no concept of overriding, overloading and all. If same rules are there, I will ignore that rule because already rule is mentioned. Right? That means only the latest will be used. It is nothing like overloading, overriding. So technically, why multiple inheritance is supported for interfaces and it is not supported for classes? That is because of constructor. That is because of constructor. And the situation is constructor deadlocks. Deadlock. That is a universal concept. Universal concept in any object-oriented programming, the inheritance depends on constructor. We learned inheritance rules, right? In the inheritance rule, we saw the rule, primary rule, that if you don't call the super constructor, then inheritance fail. Right? That is the primary rule. That means inheritance depends on constructor. So, and if constructors are many, you have to load only one, then deadlock situation will come. Due to that, inheritance is not implemented. It is not completed. Inheritance fails, right? So it is supported for interfaces. It is supported for interface. So contract supports multiple and multi-level inheritance. Contract supports multiple and multi-level inheritance. So syntactically, so interface, suppose A and interface B. So we have interface some, this is derived, extends A comma B. It can use it. So here the question is why multiple inheritance is not supported for class and it is supported for interface. Classes encounter constructor deadlock. Classes encounter constructor deadlock, which will not allow to complete, multiple inheritance. Interface will not have a constructor. Hence, it supports multiple inheritance. So there is no constructor deadlock. So interfaces will support extensibility. We can extend. But how classes will use these contracts, I will tell you. We will discuss about that. Currently, we are designing a contract and we are using that contract for a object, to design an object. But we can use the contract for a class. So how we will see that, how to handle that. So this is one example. Actually, in this example, if I am implementing vendor, here I need to define the vendor. So what is it? Vendor ID is 101 and vendor name is, suppose I defined the name some Reliance Digital. That is the vendor name. That means we are defining the details. Of course, we have to print all the details. So what we need to define in the next category. How do you get the category? This dot category name. In the next line, suppose vendor. And vendor, how you get this dot what? Vendor. Vendor name is enough. We are printing that. Now you run this tsc index.ts and we have node index.js. It is going to display all the details. So a contract can have optional rules, a contract can have read-only rules, and a contract can be extended. These are the basic things you need to know about contract. Right? This is one new concept and important. This is index.html, TS. And this is not there in your JavaScript. In JavaScript, you don't have any interfaces. So you can configure them here in the TypeScript. Right. Next, important, in the TypeScript, after understanding contracts, next we need to understand about components in TypeScript. That means it is nothing but classes. Components in TypeScript, so we call components as what? Classes. Contracts are nothing but interfaces. Components means what? Classes. And already what is a class and what are class members, we already know. In JavaScript, we discussed detailedly about class concept. right? But what is new here is actually TypeScript classes, TypeScript classes can have so two types of members. One is static, another one is non-static. We can have two types of members. One static member, another one non-static member. So in JavaScript, we cannot directly use static and non-static. So all are actually non-static, static like references. In JavaScript, there is no separate classification about static and non-static. But in TypeScript classes, when you define members, class members are same. Already we know what are the class members: properties, accessors, methods, and constructor. But additionally, in the components in the classes of TypeScript, member can be static or non-static. So what is static and what is non-static? Do you know what definition people give when we ask what is static and what is non-static? Java, .NET, all these people will give an answer like static members are accessible by class name. Who asked you how they are accessed? Why you are telling me that? I asked what is static and you are telling me how they are accessed. What is your answer? That means, do you know when you ask what is static member, then Java, .NET, C++, all these people will give an answer like static members are accessible by class name. Who asked you that? I asked you what is static and why you are giving me the definition about how it is accessible. Right? So that means that is the reason. Do you know out of 100 answers you give in interviews in real world, 80-90% of answers interviewer says, no, there is another concept about it. Tell me. What you answered is not satisfying. Then you will be very much in confused state. I learned 1 year like this only. But why this interviewer says that this is not a concept? There is another definition for that. That means, are we not learning correct definitions? So you are learning universal usage terms. You are not learning technically correct sometimes. And if you are not technically correct in interview, every time you have to face this problem. According to your faculty, what definition he given to you, you will tell the same definition to interviewer, and interviewer 100% says that it is not correct. This we face regularly in interviews. Students go and tell the definition what they learn in class, interviewer not satisfied. He says, no, there is something else about it. That means technical concept, general definitions are different. You will get general definitions sometimes just because a trainer wants to make a topic easy to understand for you, then he will use a general definition. That will satisfy you because you will clearly understand the concept. But technically it will fail you when you go to interview because actually original concept is little different. So if anybody asked what is the concept of static and non-static in computer programming, right? What is the concept of static and non-static? Let's see what is the concept of static and non-static. Actually, do you know the word static and non-static? These two words, the words static and non-static words, actually, these two words are related to memory. The word static and non-static are related to memory. Actually, we have two types of memory. We have a static memory and we have a non-static. Non-static or dynamic. We can say non-static or dynamic memory. What is the difference between them? What is the difference between static memory and non-static memory? Let's see. For example, what happens is here we are having a class, some demo. And in this class, we are having static S0 and non-static N is 0. That means we have two members. One is static member, another one non-static. Now what happens is for static member, a static memory is allocated. For non-static member, a dynamic memory is allocated. That means two memories are allocated, one for static, another for non-static. So in static memory, S is 0, S is 0, and in that S is increased by 1. S is increased by 1. Means, for example, we are doing some manipulation on S. That means increased by 1. Similarly, in non-static, N is 0 and N also increased by 1. That means same operation we are doing on both static and non-static. Now what happens is we created one object 1. We created an object 1 for which class? For demo class we created object 1. Now this object 1 will go and use the static memory and it will go and use the non-static memory. So in static memory, object 1 sets S equal to 0 plus 1 is equal to how much? 1. That means it will set S as 1. And in non-static memory also, N equal to 0 plus 1, that means N is set to 1. Now this object finished working. This object completed. It finished working. Now you created another object. That means you are creating another object for same class. This is object 2. We are creating second object for the same class. We are creating another object. We are creating another object for the same class. Now what happens is object 1 completed, then object 2 started. Now when object 1 is completed, the static memory it has used, it will continue that memory for the second object. That means the memory allocated for first object will continue for the second object. And the non-static memory which is allocated for first object is destroyed after the first object completed. That means after the first object completed, this non-static memory is deleted. But static memory is present. Now when second object goes to use the static and non-static. Now for the second object, S is already 1 plus 1. It will be how much? 2. But here it is again how much? 0 plus 1. That means it is 1. That means now by seeing this, what you understood, what is static memory? Static memory is a continuous memory. Static refers to continuous memory and non-static refers to discrete memory. Discrete memory, that means disconnected memory. That means what is static? Static refers to continuous memory. Continuous memory means the memory allocated for first object will continue for others. And the non-static memory allocated for an object will be destroyed after the object is completed. So let's see the point, means how it works. I will show you. We will see the concept. Now in real time, where we use this? For which purpose we need static and for which purpose we need non-static. That means I will explain one real scenario for static and non-static. Suppose you are making a payment through a bank app. So phone pay or Paytm or something. You initiated payment to a person. That means to a person, you are sending some money. And it is asked, so memory is allocated for your transaction and it is asking your password. You enter the password. After you enter the password, the transaction completed. To the same person, immediately, again, some more amount I want to send. Then again, it will ask the password. No, it will not ask the password. You can directly send a. No, it will ask the password again. If immediately I am sending the amount to the same person, why it is asking password again? Because the memory allocated for previous transaction is deleted after the transaction. That means it is using which type of memory? Non-static, discrete memory. The memory allocated for an object is destroyed after the object is completed. Now, come to the second point. If I use this kind of memory in my Gmail, that means I opened Gmail. It asked me, enter your user ID password. I entered user ID password. Then I logged in. After login, I can see that I have 10 mails. I clicked on first mail. It will ask me user ID password again. For every email, you have to log in. Obviously, why? Because for the first screen, what user ID password you entered, it is deleted after the screen completed. For the second screen, you have to log in again. That is not a great idea. Then what we can do is we can maintain a static memory. What is advantage of static memory? It will continue for the second, third, fourth. That means the memory allocated for first will continue for others. But static have problem. What is the problem about static? You are not continuing the operations. Then memory is allocated, but it is not in use. That means overload of memory. Static occupies more memory. And static is not safer because it may lead to memory leaks, because in the memory you are active, but you are not using. That is the reason every time static is not good, every time non-static is not good. That depends on situation. So developer uses a static member to handle continuous operation. And developer uses a non-static member to handle discrete operation, disconnected operation. That means, actually I explained that a point of that, but usually, for example, suppose, let's say, that means, for example, suppose we are having an application. We are having an application and we are having some database. That means we have a database and we have some objects, insert object, update object, and delete object. So 3 objects have to do 3 tasks. Now, before inserting, before updating, before deleting, one work is common, that is connection. This connection is common. Now what I have done is, I made this connection as a static connection. If I made the connection as static connection, what does it means? If I made the connection as static connection, insert object is connecting and inserting. After that, the connection is still open. Then update option can use that connection. Delete option can use that connection. So every time you don't need a connection to create, because the connection created for the first request will continue for others. This kind of operation is called continuous. Now this is not a good idea every time. If you're not doing continuous operations, then it is not a good idea, because connection is established, memory is allocated, but you are not updating, deleting, then the memory is still in use. Then what we use? We use a discrete connection. Discrete connection means the connection is not static. Connection is what? Dynamic. If connection is dynamic, what will happen? You initiated insert, so it will connect and it will insert. After inserting, it will disconnect. After inserting, it will disconnect. Then when you say update, then what happens is when you say update, it have to use this connection again. That means it have to create that connection again. On delete, it has to create the connection again. Every time it should create the connection and it should insert, it should update. This is good, but it is not good for continuous operations. If you are designing continuous operations, use a static memory. If you are using discrete operations, use a dynamic memory. Dynamic memory. That is the nature of static and non-static. In interviews, what is the answer you should give about static and non-static? So if anyone asks what are static and non-static, so static is for continuous memory and non-static is for discrete memory. That is the official technical architectural definition. It is for static and it is for non-static. So that means static is for continuous, non-static is for discrete. Let's see the point here. And remember, the nature of static and non-static is static members are accessible within the class, outside the class by using class name. And non-static members are accessible within the class by using this keyword, outside the class by using an object of that particular class. That is not definition, that is its behavior. How you configure static, how you access the static, that is the behavior, that is not the definition. So as a definition, never say that static members are accessible by class name. That is not definition for static, right? Let's prove this point here. We will put a class demo. In this demo class, we have static, one is S, which is 0. We have non-static N, which is also 0. In a constructor, what we are doing, so demo.s is equal to demo.s plus 1. We are increasing by 1 because static members are accessible by class name. Non-static means this dot n is equal to this dot n plus 1. Both are increased by 1. And we will use a print method. So we are using a print method. It should print the details. That means console.log. It should print. So s equal to the value of demo.s and n equal to the value of this dot n. We are printing s and n. And we will create object 1 for the demo class. For the demo class, we are creating object 1. Through object 1, we are accessing which method? Print. I am creating object 2 for the demo class. For the demo class, through object 2, I am accessing print method. I am accessing object 3 for demo class. Remember, for every object, I am allocating new memory. I am allocating new memory and object 3 dot what? Print. So for every object, a memory is newly allocated. But see the behavior here. I will run this now. So node first tsc index.ts and node index dot what? JS. And you see s is 1, 2, 3, but n is 1. 3 different objects, 3 different memory. But the memory of static is continued. First object memory is continued to second is continued to third. The memory allocated for object 1 is continuing for others. So, and why n is 1 always? Because it is non-static. That means it is dynamic. For every object, memory resets. But even it is a new memory allocated for that particular object, the previous memory object's class memory it uses. That is the nature of static. That is the nature of static. That is the concept of static and non-static actually. So in which situation a developer have to use static members? When he is designing continuous operations, then he need static. If he need discrete operations, then he have to use non-static. That means the class members can be static and non-static, static and non-static. That is the point here. So first we see what is static. It refers to continuous memory. It refers to continuous memory. It refers to continuous memory. The memory allocated for first object will continue for other objects. The memory allocated for first object will continue for other objects. So static uses a connected architecture. It uses a connected architecture. And static members are accessible within and outside class by using class name. Within and outside class by using class name. Non-static, or you say dynamic. It refers to discrete memory. Discrete memory. Memory is newly allocated for every object. Memory is newly allocated for every object. It uses a disconnected architecture. Disconnected architecture. It uses a disconnected architecture. Non-static members are accessible within class by using this keyword and outside class by using instance of class. So that is the nature of static and non-static. So when you are defining members in a class, you can configure the members as static or non-static. Default all are non-static. I told you already, TypeScript is a very big language. Individually used to build large scale applications. So we are learning only the TypeScript required for our React, Angular, anybody, same TypeScript enough. That means we are learning only the TypeScript related to web, what is needed for web. I'm not discussing everything in TypeScript. right? That becomes like a Java or C# .NET like classes. If I individually have to discuss TypeScript, 2-3 months only TypeScript will happen. That's such huge concept TypeScript is actually. We build large scale apps with TypeScript like language. So we are learning related to web. So I am giving you information about what you need for web development. So, and this is enough for Angular or React or Vue anywhere. This is enough, right? So this is about static and non-static, and this is an example for that. I'm giving you this example. In this, static S and non-static N. And we are performing operation on static and non-static, which is same operation. And we created 3 different objects for the same class. But the object 1 memory is continued for object 2. And not every memory, only the static memory is continued. Dynamic memory resets. Every time it resets. We have 3 different objects, but memory is continuing. That is what the nature of static and non-static. This is example for that. This is an example for that. Index.ts. That's the example of static and non-static. And see, many people, I already told you, many people ask like how it is translated into JavaScript. For example, do you know when you go to JavaScript file, what is JavaScript file? JS. In the JavaScript file, you see there is no static declaration. Static keyword is not there here. There is no static declaration here. Keyword is not there. Then the question is how they are using static. That internally done by translator. That's the reason I already told you. You don't try to understand the JavaScript code generated. You can never understand it. Because it will not show everything what he converted. It will show only the result which need to be used for execution. In the background, lot of process will happen, right? And you can never understand what is happening, right? Because that is internal process. That is the background process. It happens. So technically, that is one new thing about the classes you need to understand in a TypeScript. Another important is TypeScript class. TypeScript class member, class member can have access modifiers. We have public and we have private, and we have protected. We have 3 access modifiers. So JavaScript again don't have any access modifiers. But TypeScript class member can have access modifiers. The public, private, and protected. What is the nature? What is the difference? Difference is public is accessible from any location, and by using any instance, that is superclass or derived class. By using any instance, public is accessible from any location, and by using any instance, by using superclass instance or by using derived class instance, you can access. Private is accessible. Private is accessible only within the class. Private is accessible only within the class. It is not accessible outside the class. And And protected is accessible. Protected is accessible within the class and outside class. Outside class. But within, but only within derived class, only within derived class, and also only by using derived class reference, and also by using derived class reference. Derived class reference. Derived class reference. Protected is accessible within the class and outside class, but only within derived class and also by using only derived class reference. Derived class reference. That is the limitation of a protected member. So let's see these points actually. For example, we are creating here the class product. And this product class is having public, so name, which is a string type, and it is having some name. That is how we define the members inside the class. That means the property data type and the value. And we have private, so price, which is what type, number, and we define some price. Okay. Next we have protected, and that is stock, and this is a boolean and is equal to true or false. We are defining like this. Now we are creating a class. We are creating a class derived. This extends which one? Product. And we are having a print method here, public print, and it is a void method. Here also we have a public and print, and that's also a void method. Now here the point is I am creating an object. Let obj is equal to new derived. I am creating an object for derived class outside. Now through this object, which members I can access? Through this object, which members I can access? I can access only name. Only name is there. Name and print. Print is a public method. Only public members I can access. That means private is not accessible. Okay. Now I will create an object. You see here, I am creating an object. So I am creating an object, let obj. This is for whom? For product class. Now which member is accessible? Again, only public are accessible. That means only public, name and print. Only public members are accessible. You create an object for base class or a derived class, only public is accessible. Private is not accessible anywhere. Okay, what about protected then? Through derived class, I am unable to access. To base class, I am unable to access. That means I am creating an object for derived class and still I am unable to access the protected one. Protected one is stock. Then how to access the protected? What is the definition I given? Protected is accessible only inside derived class. Inside derived class. This is inside derived class. And inside derived class, I am creating an object for superclass product. Is it accessible? Not accessible. It is accessible inside derived class through derived class reference only. That means through base class reference inside derived class, obj stock is not available. Protected is accessible inside derived class by using derived class reference. Derived class reference. That means this object must be which class object? It is an derived class object. Then OBJ can access the stock. So what is protected is accessible inside the current class and accessible outside the class, but outside the class only in derived class and only through derived class object. Inside derived class only through derived class object. You can use a derived class reference. Means what? That means in the print I am using OBJ. This is a reference for which one? Derived. Through that OBJ we can access that stock. It is possible. We can access that. So we can create an object or we can access through this reference. We can access through this reference. So what is the nature of protected? Protected is accessible within the class. Within the class all are accessible. All are accessible. But protected is accessible outside the class also, but not everywhere. Outside the class only within derived class. Inside derived class by using derived class object. Inside derived class by using derived class object. Anything else not possible. That means inside derived class you created an object for base class, still protected is not accessible. To access the protected it should be this. That means here we can access OBJ is equal to new derived. And new derived through OBJ we can access name. So through OBJ we can access stock. We can access stock. And through OBJ we can access which one? Print. So outside derived class, through base class object or through derived class object, we can access only one member. What are that? Public. Only public are allowed here. Only public are allowed here. Public are allowed. Private is not accessible. Protected is not accessible. And that we need to access by using this technique, right? This is the nature of the 3 access modifiers you have in TypeScript. So that means generally JavaScript don't have any access modifiers for the members. Here we have access modifiers as well as data types. Access modifier is like public, private and protected. Now inheritance is same, polymorphism is same, there is no difference. But here we have another new concept that is about abstractions. That means how abstraction works. What is the concept of abstraction and how it works. That we'll see in next session. So we are having topics like we will learn about abstraction. We will learn about the concept of generics. We'll learn about the concept of enum. We learn about modules and namespace. These are the topics we need to know. With that, we can finish TypeScript and we can go into TypeScript React projects. Now we can build React projects with the TypeScript as a language. For that, we need these all topics to learn. That we'll see in next session. Right? Tomorrow holiday, tomorrow no session. Again, our session will be on Friday. Okay, we'll continue Friday. Right? Monday, we don't have any holiday. Monday is Raksha Bandhan. We don't have a holiday, we have session. Right? Yeah.